Transmigrated as a disabled protagonist, how should I continue the script? Chapter 3, Your Name. The result. In front of the fish died without closing its eyes. In the end, Tezuka Osamu treated him, buying some convenience store food to bring back and eat together with him. Considering that this person didn't have a tongue, Tezuka Osamu gave the cheapest rice ball to Hyakkimaru, and he himself sat on a dry rock, eating a microwaved crab meat rice ball. After hastily filling his stomach, Tezuka Osamu rummaged through his pockets and found only 2 500-yen coins. How tragic! If he didn't want to starve to death, he'd need to find himself a sponsor. You look even poorer than me. Tezuka Osamu sized up Hyakkimaru from head to toe, confirming he was just a poor wretch. If I sold you, the port mafia might give me enough money, enough for me to eat instant noodles. He waved his 5 fingers in front of Hyakkimaru's vacant eyes, confirming the other was truly both mute and deaf, perfect for selling. With malicious amusement, Tezuka Osamu said, "If you disagree, shake your head, if you agree, just stay still." Great, he agrees. Hyakkimaru was like a puppet that could breathe, sitting there, completely indifferent as Tezuka Osamu pulled and tugged at him. Tezuka Osamu continuously tested the abnormalities on his body, sometimes massaging his arm, other times pulling out a strand of black hair and blowing it towards the river. As long as his mask wasn't removed, this boy was of superior quality. In the reflection of the distant city's lights on the riverbank, Tezuka Osamu's interest peaked again. A cold wind from the other side of the river made him shiver, and he instinctively glanced at the desolate, quiet surface of the water. What do you think about us entering the water before the flowers bloom in spring? He turned his head to ask Hyakkimaru. In Hyakkimaru's eyes, the flickering white flame seemed to be blown by the wind, wilting down. It looked like a sign of illness. Hyakkimaru suddenly stood up, showcasing his outdoor skills by building a stone circle by the damp riverside, finding dry leaves and branches, and in front of Tezuka Osamu, started a fire. The firelight illuminated Tezuka Osamu's face, dispelling some of the spring chill. Tezuka Osamu poked the fire with a branch. Instead of starting a fire by the river, wouldn't it be better to find a warmer place to stay? Saying this, he pouted. I forgot you can't talk and can't hear my voice. With decisive action, Tezuka Osamu completely ignored the other's opinion, once again grabbing his hand while also assessing the bandages wrapped around this person, which were similar to his own, tied up so sloppily. Next time, use proper bandages. Let's go. Stomping out the fire, Tezuka Osamu easily led Hyakkimaru away, thinking to himself, this person is too easy to handle. Hyakkimaru glanced at the fire that had once again sparked with the vitality of life and silently felt content. That night, Hyakkimaru didn't stay outdoors or in a corner, but was taken by Tezuka Osamu to a nearby vacant room. Tezuka Osamu effortlessly picked the lock, drew the curtains, and casually filled the bathtub with water, firmly insisting that this newly acquainted person get in and wash himself, inside and out. How long has it been since you last had a bath? With a bang, the bathroom door closed, leaving Hyakkimaru standing inside, bewildered. A moment later, he understood. It was bath time. Through the bathroom door, Tezuka Osamu heard the sound of water splashing and sighed in relief. Not that dumb after all. No, a truly stupid person wouldn't be able to survive on their own. Leaning against the door, the brown-haired boy felt an itch of curiosity, both because he hadn't seen the full face and because the other's appearance was so terrifying. He was genuinely curious whether there were a pair of eyes beneath the mask. If there were, had this person gotten used to having his vision blocked by the mask, or had he always been in a state of blindness? Tezuka Osamu muttered, I just get the feeling that looking at him will give me nightmares. It was too incredible. A person who was deaf, mute, and blind wasn't all that rare, but someone with such elevated combat skills, he'd never heard of that before. He pinched the air, confirming the feeling ahead of him. Great, the other person's limbs also had issues. He believed that if the mask was taken off and the person wore different clothes, they could walk in front of the mafia and not be recognized, assuming the mafia members wouldn't be so shocked that they'd immediately open fire. Tezuka Osamu chuckled and went to find a set of pajamas for him. Without caring whether Hyakkimaru agreed or not, Tezuka Osamu pretended to knock on the door, twisted the handle, and entered, placing the simplest set of pajamas directly on the head of the expressionless Hyakkimaru, who was sitting in the bathtub. "For you." For a moment, he looked exactly like a Japanese bath floater. Tezuka Osamu quickly glanced at Hyakkimaru's limbs soaking in the warm water, and his pupils suddenly contracted. There were 2 joint lines across his shoulders. On his lower abdomen, near the groin area, there were 2 more. "You. How did he survive?" After washing his dirty clothes, Hyakkimaru emerged from the bathroom. The woman's belted nightgown fit him without any sense of awkwardness. His chest, exposed beneath the thin white fabric, and his loose hair, black and draped over his shoulders, made him look like a youth recovering from external injuries, freshly bathed. He appeared so clean and refreshed that it could almost make one forget all the scars and disabilities on his body. Tezuka Osamu, sitting on the sofa while stifling a yawn, glanced at him. Hyakkimaru then instinctively sat down beside him. Tezuka Osamu immediately asked Hyakkimaru, "How did you know I was here?" There was no need for Hyakkimaru to answer. Tezuka Osamu walked behind the sofa, not making a single sound, yet Hyakkimaru immediately turned his head toward him, even more alert than someone with sight. Tezuka Osamu picked up a fruit knife from the coffee table and brought it to Hyakkimaru's neck, stopping at the throat. No reaction. He spoke in a strange tone. Facing the calm Hyakkimaru, Tezuka Osamu briefly considered actually stabbing him, just to see his reaction. However, killing someone he found intriguing out of spite was something he couldn't bring himself to do, at least not yet. "Alright, I get it," Tezuka Osamu said, letting go of the fruit knife. As if to retaliate for Hyakkimaru's calm demeanor, he took Hyakkimaru's ear, then pressed it back. He figured he wouldn't come across anyone with a better temperament than Hyakkimaru. "You can sense danger, and feel my presence." He added one more sentence. "You can see life. The reason you specifically eat raw creatures is because you can perceive signs of life in them." With just a few words, he uncovered the nature of Hyakkimaru's abilities. Tezuka Osamu leaned over the back of the sofa, relaxing as he hugged a cushion. His sharp eyes, unbound by the bandages, moved as his curiosity about Hyakkimaru's background rose to the forefront. What made him feel even more at ease was the fact that he didn't need to hide anything or pretend. He could act however he wanted, since this person couldn't see him at all. An idea arose, and Tezuka Osamu rushed over to grab the cactus raised by the owner of the house. "Here, what do you see this as?" What Hyakkimaru saw was the life force of a plant, a faint white light, its color about to be overtaken by the other person's life flame. Sticking to his silent and reserved character, he made no movement. Tezuka Osamu, on the other hand, grabbed a handful of Hyakkimaru's wet hair with one hand, looking at him with anticipation. Hyakkimaru was puzzled. Thinking that this might be an attempt at lively interaction from Dororo's energetic personality, he figured that trying to communicate with him must be exhausting. So, he couldn't keep up the silent, wooden act. Hyakkimaru took the cactus from Tezuka Osamu's hands and, under his surprised gaze, placed it on the table. Tezuka Osamu stretched out his words, "So you did see it, huh? It isn't an ability. It was something naturally ingrained." "No, it was more like a skill honed through experiences and innate talent." "I'm too sleepy, no more games." Tezuka Osamu, acting on a whim, tossed Hyakkimaru onto the sofa, not caring what his name was or whether he would be offended. He then went off to sleep in the guest room. In the living room, Hyakkimaru touched the cactus, carefully plucking off something from it, and eventually ate it. "Is this food that Dororo gave me?" A lovely misunderstanding. Daytime. Tezuka Osamu followed Hyakkimaru near the Suribachi district, where Hyakkimaru was searching for evil entities. Whenever he encountered a life flame that was turbid and corrupt, he would deliver a blow but generally wouldn't deal a fatal strike. Before long, Tezuka Osamu used his own methods to find out that Hyakkimaru had recently gained a reputation in this poor neighborhood. The boy with crippled hands and swordsmanship. The one who beats up villains from outside. The one hunted by Sheep King half a month ago. Tezuka Osamu rested his chin on his hands, sitting on the stairs, watching Hyakkimaru beat people up. Compared to his own situation in Yokohama, Hyakkimaru had fared surprisingly well over the past half-month. In such a short time, he had already been accepted by the typically xenophobic Suribachi district. It seemed unbelievable, as Suribachi wasn't welcoming to outsiders. Could it be that he's just too pitiful? The people who abandoned the world, and the world abandoned them, hid in the Suribachi district. They stole, robbed, murdered, trafficked people, smuggled weapons. Gradually, they would accept any filthy way of survival. This place directly bordered Yokohama's underworld. When Dazai first learned about it, he didn't want to go because he disliked the unreasonable number of thugs here. Finished fighting? Seeing the black-haired boy swiftly running over, Tezuka Osamu pointed behind him in confusion. There are still a few you haven't finished off, right? If I'm not mistaken, they're repeat offenders who love robbing. He didn't finish his sentence. My hair! Tezuka Osamu exclaimed as Hyakkimaru lifted him up and took off running. Hyakkimaru's pace was top tier, running at a breakneck speed without asking for any input, moving with the instincts of a wild animal sensing danger. Tezuka Osamu tried to lift his head and look back. A mass of red, explosive light was rushing toward them from a distance, brimming with murderous intent. An enemy? Hyakkimaru's sharp instincts always seemed better, allowing him to avoid in time whenever Nakahara-chuya got close. Having received intelligence and now in pursuit, Nakahara-chuya kicked off a wall, which immediately cracked. He held back his rage, shouting, "If you're so tough, stop running, you bastard." The villains lying on the ground groaned in pain, trying to crawl out of the vicious Sheep King's attack range. When Nakahara-chuya glanced down, he laughed in anger. Am I really that terrifying? The fiery young man grinned menacingly, cold blue light gleaming from under his hood. If he's beating you, you must be real scum who've done all sorts of evil. I noticed he didn't hit you hard enough, you're still able to crawl. On my turf, I don't need lowlifes like you messing around. Another vicious blow landed. After releasing his pent-up energy, Nakahara-chuya dusted off his hands and walked away. Over on the other side, having narrowly escaped danger, Hyakkimaru put down the person he had been carrying. Tezuka Osamu rubbed his stomach but didn't bother asking what had caused the commotion. His interest quickly shifted as he pointed to an old bookstore in Suribachi. Let's check that place out. At the second-hand bookstore, Tezuka Osamu successfully found a lot of books that were banned. Hyakkimaru sat at the shop's entrance, looking like a guardian deity, which frightened the smoking shopkeeper. The shopkeeper snuffed out his cigarette, glanced at Hyakkimaru's hands, then turned to look at Tezuka Osamu, who was busy browsing through the books. Aren't you going to run? The shopkeeper said to Hyakkimaru, then suddenly mocked himself, well, you're really strong. Not like the rest of us who lose our nerve the moment we hear that the port mafia is hunting someone down. Tezuka Osamu approached with a smile, what are you talking about? The port mafia? The shopkeeper quickly hushed him, keep your voice down. Suppressing his smoking urge, the shopkeeper explained the port mafia's manhunt for a young boy equipped with swords. He wasn't considered to be particularly kind, he just hoped the situation wouldn't bring trouble to Suribachi. You say you're his friend, right? Then advise him to leave Suribachi quickly. So that's how it is. Tezuka Osamu's face lit up with an expression of sudden realization, as fake as it could be, but the unfamiliar shopkeeper couldn't tell. Next, Tezuka flashed a smile that made the shopkeeper break into a cold sweat. For you to say that means Suribachi is a place even the port mafia can't easily invade. Otherwise, they would have just come in and grabbed him, without causing unnecessary chaos. I've heard that the most famous person in Suribachi is called the Sheep King. The port mafia must have suffered at his hands before and fears him. If the two sides were to start a fight in Suribachi, this bookstore, sitting right next to the district, might end up in the crossfire. No longer paying attention to the shopkeeper, Tezuka Osamu stuffed something into Hyakkimaru's clothing, waved his hand in farewell, and said, "We're leaving right away, and consider this book a gift from you to us." The shopkeeper's face twisted with displeasure, but there was nothing he could do. He just wanted these two troublemakers to leave quickly. Hyakkimaru reached into his chest to touch the book, but Tezuka Osamu dragged him away. As they walked, Tezuka Osamu laughed and said, "Thanks to your reputation in Suribachi, after you escaped the Sheep King's pursuit, the port mafia will now regard you even more highly." Just as they were about to leave the boundaries of Suribachi, Tezuka stepped on the dividing line, turned to Hyakkimaru, and said, "The choice is yours." Tezuka Osamu let go of his hand, standing just outside the boundary line. "Follow me, and I'll help you end the manhunt. Or stay in Suribachi and join the sheep." The Sheep King is the leader of Suribachi's youth self-defense organization. Seeing your physical condition, his hatred for you isn't as severe as you might think. Every time he comes for you, he comes alone. It seems he's more interested in fighting you than seeking revenge. After presenting the second option and saying a lot of words, Tezuka Osamu watched as Hyakkimaru directly stepped over the boundary line, shattering the choice. Hyakkimaru, using every ounce of will to survive, had always trusted his sixth sense. The other had stopped. That meant he was waiting for him to come. Realizing he had walked up to the life flame beside him, and the other person wasn't leading him anymore, Hyakkimaru tilted his head to see him. The pure white flame burned so brightly it seemed like it was about to burn itself up. "No, you can't." Hyakkimaru vaguely recalled that Dororo had some kind of unique background, not like his own as a nomad. With his cold right hand, he proactively grasped the person who had joined him the day before. "You must continue to live." Hyakkimaru's pure will, driven by the effort to survive, made Tezuka Osamu, whose mind was exceptionally sharp, suddenly feel like he couldn't breathe. Such a strong desire to survive. For him, it was too overwhelming. What meaning does life hold anyway? Tezuka Osamu gasped for breath, giving up as he turned his head, calmly staring at the person who couldn't even see him. "Let's go." After walking a few steps, Tezuka Osamu pulled him over to a spot on the sandy shore. "First, tell me your name, and I'll figure out a way to give you a fake identity." Hyakkimaru, for a moment, seemed to connect with him on a deeper level. Reborn into this world, having forgotten his old name, the boy crouched down and began writing his new name, one stroke at a time, in the sand. Hyakkimaru. Born to be sacrificed to the demon gods by his father, yet saved by the protection of Kangnan Bodhisattva. This was Hyakkimaru's simple past. Tezuka Osamu remembered the name and remarked, "Hyakkimaru? It doesn't sound very lucky." Japan has always feared demons. Throughout history, stories of demons never ceased. It was said that demons feared the vital energy of strong men and wouldn't dare approach those with fierce, terrifying auras. Tezuka Osamu speculated, but someone like you, even demons would probably be scared of. If heaven can't kill you, how could demons kill you? Before the port mafia members could show up, Tezuka Osamu hurriedly led the easily deceived Hyakkimaru away. "Enough talking. We can't let them catch us." This time, it was Hyakkimaru who was being dragged along at full speed by Tezuka Osamu. While running lightly, Hyakkimaru didn't break a sweat, his stamina far surpassing Tezuka Osamu's. He noticed that the other person always liked to grab his left hand, so he subtly shifted his left hand upward, drawing the other's attention. And just like that, it easily slipped from his grasp. Chapter 3 End.